You're listening to Cobb, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan.
So Sharan, we are 12 episodes down.
Yeah.
And we haven't yet discussed any of your work, specifically any brand that you worked upon. I remember you mentioning possibly Tang in a couple of podcasts.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm quite surprised that we haven't decided to talk about Tang till now.
When there isn't too much to talk about, you don't talk about it, right?
No, I'm sure there is quite a few things about Tang that we can talk about, and that is what we are picking up today. So first, tell
Right.
me, why have you decided to talk about Tang today?
One issue I keep encountering with a lot of people is that they look at the big companies and say, we can't build brands like these big companies. And for all purposes, Tang was a very, very small brand while it was still within the Mondelez ecosystem. It was a very, very small, I would even call it a startup brand. And I keep telling people brand building is more about the mindset and not necessarily about the money you have or the money you spend. In fact, even you've touched upon it, how brand building starts way before marketing does.
Hmm.
And there's also a lot of companies a lot of the startups and the entrepreneurs look at the large companies and blindly ape the large companies, assuming that whatever the large company is doing is correct. So I just wanted to break of some of those mindsets and say how even in a large ecosystem, mistakes are made and how a brand can thrive based on the mindset of the people managing it.
Interesting. Sounds like a lot of drama, a lot of way arounds, a lot of workarounds, and finally some happy endings.
Yes, with me around, there's always drama, right?
Correct. And now that you've mentioned that you were around, so for a change, are you going to, take up something where you will talk highly about yourself and create
Of
some
course.
drama about the work that you did in the past?
Of course, it's all about me, right? So, in fact, the entire story is about how Mondelez India collectively failed the brand Tang and
Ah,
how I jumped to its rescue and set up the happily ever after for Tang.
wow. Very nice. The superhero, Sharuna Raghavan.
The marketing superhero. That's the version I give my clients anyway. But yeah, so just to avoid litigation, I'll say that this was all teamwork, and all of us, people before and after me, were responsible for all the failures and successes.
Okay.
So, for the record, my boss during the Tang episode was Mr. Amit Shah.
Hmm.
He is now the chief cluster officer for West and North at ZTV.
Hmm.
And he, in turn, used to report to Mr. Narayan Sundararaman,
Hmm.
who is the head of marketing at Bajaj Auto today.
Hmm.
So they were very, very instrumental in all that happened. And of course, if you ask them, they'll say, I was this menial brand manager who was just following instructions. But then this is our podcast. Why should we ask them?
What I can say for sure is, while you might have been a menial brand manager, you don't follow anybody's instructions. So that second part of the statement might not be true.
That they will agree.
Okay. So let's start with this. So tell us a little bit, how did this begin? What all happened? And where did the brand go, etc.?
Right. To truly understand the drama, it's important to understand the backstory.
Okay.
So Tang had tried multiple times to get into India.
Hmm.
And when from the time we were growing up, it was always available through the imported channel.
Hmm.
One of the sharpest ventures, or the most purposeful ventures, was done by Kraft, the then owner of Tang, in a tie-up with Dabur.
Hmm.
And they even set up a factory in Hyderabad. But American company, Kraft being pushy, Dabur being the Desi company, the chemistry didn't quite work. And when Dabur launched Real, it was almost seen as a conflict, and the JV fell through.
Hmm.
By the time the JV fell through, they'd already set up this factory. They tried servicing through other distributors, but those volumes weren't enough. So they kept the factory and they started servicing the India market through importers by the products from Thailand.
Okay.
So in 2011, when Kraft took over Cadbury,
Hmm.
there was no real thought behind it. He said, we have a factory for Tang, we should just launch Tang in India.
Hmm.
And that's how the decision to launch Tang was done, that simply.
Okay.
And the launch itself was a bit of a chaotic launch.
Hmm.
And as everybody would know today, that Oreo was also launched in 2011.
Hmm.
And Oreo went on to be among the most successful FMCG launches in a long time in India.
Yeah.
And Tang was the exact opposite.
Hmm.
So we had to move stock from the distributor, and I think we hit it in the middle of summer. I think the launch in the middle of summer. In fact, we didn't even have the full season.
Hmm.
And given what we're used to, and we're not a soft drink company, right?
Yeah.
So we said we're going to launch the 5 rupee sachets because CDM 5 sells, 5-star 5 sells, and those are the largest SKUs. We looked at competition, and they were also selling a lot of sachets. So we said we're going to launch 5 rupee sachets. And there was also the problem that when we moved stock from the distributors, our legal team came and said, we're not allowed to sell the mango flavor of Tang. There was some issue with the recipe, and we weren't allowed to sell the mango flavor of Tang.
Okay.
So the entire launch was with just orange and lemon.
Hmm.
And we had overloaded the sachets bit.
Mm-hmm.
And sachets weren't selling.
Hmm.
They just didn't have a right to win. So it took us some time to understand that unlike chocolates, they are not personal consumption sachets or like a shampoo. People take sachets home. Even if they did, they make it in a bartan. It's a shared consumption. So 5 rupees for a single consumption really did not have a right to win with the consumers.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's when I think Amit entered the scene. That's when he'd come from Dabur. He was used to manage Real before this. And he brought in a lot of beverage thinking into the system.
Hmm.
And he coined the term brilliant basics, which is pretty legendary within Mondelez today.
Yeah.
He decided to kind of get the basics right on the brand first.
Hmm.
So in 2012, we launched the revised mango variant.
Hmm.
But the hangover of the previous season of this sachet still remained in the system. And we went and spoke to a lot of mothers to understand how we can crack Tang and all that. And mothers said what? Milk, fruits, and nuts are the only things they trust for their children.
Hmm.
And they did not really know the difference between fruit flavor and fruit content.
Okay.
So the international Tang recipe always spoke about the flavors and the fruit flavors that were there.
Hmm.
But in India, we said we are not just going to talk about fruit flavor, we're going to put fruit in the recipe.
Hmm.
And we revamped the entire Tang portfolio recipe to include fruit powder. And I think in one of the previous episodes, I mentioned how we copied or rather recreated an ad from Brazil, and it just didn't resonate with the consumers.
Yeah. The recycled one.
Yes.
Hmm.
And this time we did a simple plain campaign. I think this was the Anna Hazare movement was going on at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, Gajraj Rao, the very famous actor today, I think he's done quite a few ads with different Cadbury brands, right? Even 5-star is done.
Yes.
So he directed this one.
Hmm.
And plain said, Naya Tang mein hai fruit powder.
Hmm.
And that was what it was. It was a good hook with children and mothers. Very functional ad. That worked very well for us in 2013. And our market shares went up. In 1 year, we became the number one concentrate brand in modern trade. In GT, our share among handlers was continuously on the up. So that was basically settling down from what people were calling a rounding error or a loss leader of a brand. We had now settled down in 2013. And that was, you could call 2013 the first successful season of Tang.
Okay. Just to clarify for everybody, concentrate means that all brands which sell concentrated powder, which can be mixed into water and turned into a drink.
Liquid also. I mean, we can name the brands, right? It's Rasna, your Rue Afza, even your Glucon-D is a concentrate brand.
Okay. Excellent.
That is the category we were playing in.
Okay. And MT is modern trade. You said GT is general trade, which is your regular mom and pop stores, convenience stores. And when Sharan speaks about share amongst handlers is your market share in shops where you are present. Your market overall market share is total value that you sell divided by total sales of the category. But if you specifically look at share amongst handlers, you will only see what is my market share, what is the sale that I do in the shops where I'm present, and what is the size of category in the shops. Usually relevant for slightly smaller brands who don't have great distribution. Share amongst handlers tells you how well you sell from shops where you are present.
That also
Yeah.
tells you if you increase distribution, how much
Hmm.
more business you can actually have.
You can have. Yeah.
So 2013 was actually a successful season.
Hmm.
But then for the upcoming season, another lightning struck us. In
Hmm.
the sense that, yes, we are number one concentrate brand in most places that we are playing in. But concentrates itself is a declining segment among beverages.
Hmm.
So what's the point of being the number one in a declining segment?
Hmm.
So that wasn't going to last for too long. So you had to compete with the higher order category. In our case, which was RTDs, ready to drink beverages. So nowhere have we ever had a concentrate brand try to compete with a ready to drink beverage category.
Give us an example. What is a ready to drink one?
Anything you can drink right out of the bottle at
So,
home. It's all of it is for in-home consumption. So your fruity, Maaza, Fanta, Sprite, all of
real
it is a ready to drink brand.
juice.
Are ready to drink brands. All juices, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So anything that you can drink straight out of the bottle or the Tetra Pak is a
Hmm.
ready to drink brand.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So we had to compete with those brands. But how were we to do it?
Hmm.
We had to reframe competition. And also the thing with ready to drink beverages was that their throughput was so high in summer. So every family that was penetrated roughly consumed 2 to 3 1 liter bottles in a period of 4 months of mixed brands, but that was the consumption. But if you take a concentrate brand, there was just one pack being consumed for the entire summer season. And those were the households that were buying the concentrate powder. So what do we do? When you're lost for this, you always go back to the consumer.
Hmm.
And my wife makes fun of this because she says, I could have told you this. I think the best insights are those that seem very obvious in retrospect, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So we went to the consumers to understand what's going on in the category and how we could improve. We realized that most people buy one pack of Tang because they don't even use that pack of Tang fully.
Hmm.
They see it in the store in summer, they pick it up, go home. The day they go home, they make a few glasses of Tang with it.
Hmm.
Then they put a rubber band and put it in the fridge or put it in a dabba in the pantry and they forget about it. Next trip to the store, they kind of are reminded about Tang they have at home. They come back home and they see it's already caked up because it's a hydrophobic product. It's all caked up and they see it's a waste. They try digging it out of the bottle, doesn't work, so they throw it away. Say, yeah, I don't want to buy Tang again because it's a waste of money anyway.
Hmm.
But if you buy a ready to drink beverage, it's sitting in the fridge, and everybody who opens the fridge takes a sip, and that's why it gets over so fast. And in one season, about 2 or 3 liters is a given. And even for people who bought Tang regularly, which is largely the SEC, BNC households, the goal of the homemaker, the mother, was to make that pack of Tang last a month, no matter how many glasses of Tang she made with it. So she would titrate, reduce the amount of Tang she was doing. She was adding to the glass of water. And she took great pride in doing it. And children, after a point, don't ask for it because the taste is so diluted.
Hmm.
The other point was also that even I did not know how much Tang was required to be added to a glass of water.
Hmm.
So R&D could tell me, but I would just do it by tasting it. Anybody would.
Hmm.
The other issue we noticed was the ticket size, where if you were to compare it to a ready-to-drink beverage, let's say a Fanta or a Sprite, at that time, I think a half liter of Sprite bottle was about 30 rupees, 40 rupees. And the largest selling pack of Tang was the 100 rupees ka half kilo pack.
Hmm.
Now, a half kilo pack of Tang could make 4 liters of Tang beverage, but that's not really comparable at the point of purchase. They look at 40 rupees versus 100 rupees. And the smallest pack we had was 50 rupees for 200 grams. And that again didn't really drive trials for us. So remember we launched the sachets, which was supposed to drive trials. Now sachets are out of the picture, and our starting price point was 50. When the beverages were all selling at 30, and they had a larger volume to represent in the form of a ready-to-drink beverage. So these were the issues we had.
You're listening to COB, Conversations on the Business of Brands. Your hosts are Sudeep Chawla, marketing practitioner, business leader, and educator to advertising and marketing professionals, and Sharavana Raghavan of Vitriol Innovations, consultants to consumer-facing brands and businesses. For more information, go to copcast.net. If you find this podcast helpful, please help us by telling your friends and rating us.
With this, the solution is rather embarrassingly simple. Because what we did was we said, we're going to launch a 1 liter pack of Tang. So R&D told us that to make the exact tasting Tang, you need 125 grams of Tang. So we launched a 125 gram pack, but we called it the 1 liter pack of Tang. And our entire activation, including sampling or TV ads, or social media wasn't so big then, outdoors, was all about getting people to make Tang in a bottle. And it was about telling them how even children could make Tang in a bottle, and to drive behavior of making Tang in a bottle instead of a bartan. And we gave away the sippers for free. You buy 3 packs of Tang, you get a sipper free. And the sippers were branded with Tang, so the brand assets were all taken care of. But the whole idea was to say Tang to be associated with a bottle. And that blew the lid off the growth for us. And I think we hit about 200 crores that year. I think 2014.
Yeah.
14, 15, 14. I think we hit about 200 crores that year. And
Nice.
starting off at a loss-leading 30 crore business, which was on the verge of being shut down, this took us to 200 crores with full profitability, because at 30 rupees for a liter, we were actually making 25 rupees per liter. We were actually making money on it.
Nice.
Just creating a new SKU and trying to trigger consumer behavior change sounds almost comical. So when I tell people this is the innovation we did, what is that innovation? You just change the pack size. How is that an innovation? Because most people think an innovation is about engineering the product, delivering something else. But it's got to be so tied into the consumer experience that it can be so simple. That's the point I'm trying to make.
That's a brilliant point, Sharan. So you don't need to create earth-shattering changes to trigger new levels of consumption. It could be something as simple as changing an SKU size, but it has to be done, number one, via tying it up with some kind of consumer need, and like
Right.
you said, then in a very thematic manner. So you call it a 1 liter pack, activate it in a certain manner. It's quite lovely. So I also remember, Sharan, I think that year and possibly the next year, we also won a lot of awards for this, right?
Yeah, we won a lot of awards. So people still laugh about it to say, for making this one pack, you won so many awards. So we actually won the Asia Pacific FE silver. So I am biased here, but I think FEs are by far the best marketing awards, because they check for the effectiveness of the activity you've done, the innovation you've done, and not just the creativity of it. So I take great pride in Tang having won the FE for this activity. And even internally, I think we won a lot of awards. We were the fastest growing brand unit in all of Mondelez for 2014. And from a point where the India CEO wouldn't really bother talking about Tang in the year 2011.
Hmm.
In 2014, when the global CEO visited India and she spoke to the press, she pointed out how Tang was doing so well in India, and that was a case to be emulated. So I think the entire team was very proud of it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, and
Excellent.
also this campaign was adapted across regions after that.
Oh, okay. Nice.
What we did in India got
Ah.
adapted across multiple regions, and that set the framework to say how Tang should behave in an emerging market. So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
a brilliant case that's within the Mondelez system even today.
No, it's quite nice, Sharon. Sounds very simple and intuitive now that you look back at it retrospectively. But must have been quite a ride.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I
All the
really like
options
it.
that we rejected before we came here
Ah,
sound so farcical when we think back at them today.
correct. Correct. No, I agree. So excellent. I quite like this, and for the benefit of possibly everybody, what how they usually do it on Twitter, saying TLDR, too long did not read. So let me summarize a bit. We spoke about Tang today, where Sharon has a first-hand experience working on the brand when it was launched in India, officially launched in India. So from a context point of view, it was sold. People were generally aware of Tang, but when they brought it to India, there were significant amount of barriers to start with, from a legal side, regulatory side, date of stock, uh, getting the SKUs right, etc., etc. And that is where Sharon and Amit and team got back to doing brilliant basics, getting the portfolio right, launching it properly, getting the season right, etc. And what Sharon spoke about very specifically and repeatedly is that they kept going back to consumer to discover how could they make Tang dearer to them. So he spoke about, the how what was it that mothers used to consider good for their kids, and from there they came back with a product proposition that said नए टैंग में पाउडर है, fruit powder है. Yeah. And therefore, that was one of their propositions where they started seeing success. And what really, changed the game is when they reframed their competition and wanted to go after ready to drink drinks. Yeah. And once they wanted to go back to competing with them, it was critical that they had to be considered as something which is kept in the fridge and drank like a RTD is,
Right.
yeah, rather than being stored in pantry. And therefore, a very simple sounding but very very effective innovation was about getting this liter pack out, and then thematically activating it, putting an advertising behind it, and like Sharon said, with every 3 pack they gave away a bottle, etc. So all of that really really took the brand to a very very different level. And Sharon would obviously like us to believe that he was the one who was doing all of this.
Obviously.
But this is brilliant work, Sharon. I think you should be very very proud uh, for having done all of this and getting Tang to a stature where the future generations of brand managers and category heads, etc., could take it forward and build upon it. This is really fundamental and really really good work.
Right. And the proof, one point I missed when talking about the results was that earlier I mentioned a half kilo pack of Tang was
Hmm.
to last a month
Hmm.
or the entire summer in most cases.
Hmm. Hmm.
Here we had 1 liter, so 125 grams,
Hmm.
lasting just a week in a household.
Hmm.
So 500 grams over 3 months to
Hmm.
125 grams over a week. That's
Hmm.
the velocity we hit for consumption.
Yeah, almost 3 times the velocity. And
Yeah,
that is because you got them to make it and keep it in the refrigerator.
exactly. So that you don't have to wait for somebody to make it for you. Every time you open the fridge, you start taking a sip of it.
Correct. I think it is unfortunate that all our listeners would be possibly be discovering this episode somewhere in their winters. Else, we could have triggered a fresh round of consumption for Tang, and Sharon could have taken some credit out of it.
You
Okay,
can still take a lot of credit out of it.
we can, and we should. Great, excellent. This is great, Sharan. I think a lot of our listeners would be wiser by listening to this, because Tang is an ideal example of, almost a brand which is starting off. While you
Right.
had some amount of resources being available to you because you were part of a big setup, but still the brand had to find its own legs and create its own growth levers, etc., to be able to establish itself and then grow the way it has grown in the last few years.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing it back to that point, because other than the post measures, which is your share among handlers, your market share data,
Hmm.
and your source of volumes, all of this is post
Hmm.
evaluation data. That's the expensive one.
Hmm.
Rest of it is all consumer engagement and understanding everything firsthand from the consumer.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that is what I was trying to point out, to say it's about the mindset. If you're
Hmm.
willing to listen to the consumer and you have the idea of catering to the consumer and building up not just a business but a brand for the long term,
Hmm.
then money is not necessarily a factor at all.
Correct. Correct. I agree. That's a brilliant point, and I think a great closure to today's interesting podcast. Thank you very much, Sharon.
Thank you for listening to COB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's COBBCAST.net.